Good morning, Julie Koehrer.
Good morning, Jason Padgett. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
We have a lot to talk about today.
We have a lot to talk about today.
We were going to talk about data centers in Indiana and the SK Hynix chip factory. And you wanted to talk about the difference between chat interface and agentic AI and the confusion that there is in conversations around that.
Yeah, and a lot of that because I'm even guilty of it, right? So what reminded me of it is in a work meeting the other day, our digital marketing manager was explaining to somebody who had asked a really great question, but she was explaining that the AI that we use is not the same agentic AI that is top of mind, hot topic for everybody. And I was like, oh, that's a really good reminder that they are separate things. And then I thought, what a great opportunity to have that discussion because I know that even I fall into that, right? So, like, do you mind kind of giving us a rundown again of what the differences are?
No, I would love to. And I appreciate you asking. And I actually heard something kind of relevant that reminded me of something the other day, which is that the capabilities that these models are having and the limited hallucinations that you're getting out of most of them now, and why that is. Because people will say that a large language model is just a prediction engine, a stochastic parrot, right? And the actual truth of that is the foundational technology underlying a large language model, that is what it is. Once you've sent it through fine tuning and reinforcement learning and given it the capability to reason, that is no longer how it operates. So if you were to take that neural network, those transistors, that this whole architecture that we now have come to know as a large language model, and you give it pre-training, which is to let it ingest the entirety of the internet as well as anything else that you can get your hands on to feed it, legal or illegal. We're not going to get into all that pre-training stuff, right? You give it all that. What it's going to do is look through it all, figure out how different subjects and different words relate to one another. And then if you ask that raw model a question, then it is going to do a probability of what the next character is, what the next word is, what the next token is. The large language models measure things in tokens, and a token is a chunk of a word that includes the comma, the space, any kind of apostrophe. Like, it doesn't look at things as a word is broken down into the number of letters that are in the word. It breaks things down more like syllables would be more the way tokens work, the way that we do things. Right. So it's going to predict the next token to complete something. But once you've done that, the post training of that afterwards, you're going to have either another model or a human being judging its outputs, telling it, no, that's not a good output. Yes, this is a good output. You should have done more of this. That at one point in time, and Karen Howe loves to whine about this in her book. She goes a little bit overboard on it. But at one point in time, that was third world countries, and it was people who were getting paid pennies on the dollar to sit around and just check yes, no, yeah, that's pornographic. No, that's not pornographic. Yeah, that's a right answer. No, it's a right answer. That is no longer the case. The models are so strong and so powerful now that they're paying hundreds of dollars an hour to subject matter experts to say, no, that is not the right law to quote for this, or that, no, that is not the right mathematical answer. And originally, math was one of the things that was really challenged with. I don't know if you remember back in the day, but ChatGPT and all the other models used to not know how many R's were in the word strawberry. They always thought there was only two, and there's three. And people are like, see, this thing's an idiot. Well, there are now mathematicians who are upset because these models are proving math equations that they have not been able to prove for hundreds of years, and worrying them that they're going to be out of a job,
Hmm.
that it's becoming so good at it. So the functionality is totally there, right? So using agentic AI before that functionality was there, which is kind of why I've given all this back information, was very dangerous because you don't want something just making shit up when it's off doing it on its own for your company. That would be very problematic, or giving wrong answers, right? Then we've seen some cases of that. We've seen an Agentic AI customer service bot that someone was able to basically jailbreak, hack, get it to give them a free flight or a car for $2 that should have cost $30,000. And the courts have upheld that those companies had to honor that because they launched that chatbot, right? So all that to say, what is the difference in how we've interacted with this technology since it came out? We were all introduced to the chat interface through ChatGPT, right? So we're just going to frame this around ChatGPT because that's the most common interface for most people. And that was, you ask it a question, it gives you an answer based on its training, and it made some stuff up quite a bit. You copy and pasted that. If you wanted it to write you a social media post or a email, you copied and pasted that, right? Then we gave it the ability to search the internet. That was originally a concern. If these things were loose on the internet, then escape velocity, and if they become super intelligent overnight, which they didn't, then they'd already have access to the internet. We'd all be screwed. Like, that was the conversation initially. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but there's a lot to cover here.
All right. Yeah.
So we gave it that. And then we gave it the ability to reason, which was basically to go back and look at its response and think it over step by step and to kind of argue with itself. And that really gave it a lot of power. So now you got to the point where you could research things on the internet. You're still through a chat interface, right? Perplexity began to replace Google as a search engine for a lot of people because you would say, hey, what are the restaurants around Indianapolis? And they would come back with like a couple of paragraph, nice explanation. We kind of see that as Google overviews now in Google, but it would give you a nice explanation. Then you could click on each of the links and see whether or not it took you to the actual source that it pulled that from. Still, you're within the chat interface. And then we began to realize, okay, it's kind of the whole idea of a general purpose technology is great for a consumer interface. However, at a business sense, like, we don't really, like, your finance guy doesn't know a whole lot about ops, and your ops person doesn't know a lot about design. So it would be nice if we could kind of create little rooms of knowledge where the model used its power, but had some information that it pulled directly from that was relevant to that subject. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was the next step, and that's what you call a custom GPT. In Google, you call it a gem. In Claude, you call it a project. So now you're opening a separate project. You're adding your own documents to it, and you're giving it custom instructions. Whenever I'm in here talking to you, we are talking about my social media marketing campaign. Here's our brand guide here. So don't just go out on the internet and pull any social media marketing. We're talking about Q1067 social media marketing, and you have this set of documents. People have begun to have not just begun, for a long time, they've called that agents. Those are not agents. A Copilot, you can build one of those in Copilot. That's one of the most common places people say, this is an agent. That is not an agent. An agent is when you can take an AI system and say, I want you to go do a bunch of work. And I just built a bunch of agentic stuff this weekend. So I'll give an example of what that looks like. I have a NotebookLM account. I use voice memos on my phone all week long. I'll turn it on and off, put ideas in there, and then I upload those to a NotebookLM account, that audio. So there's a whole week's worth of my thoughts in every NotebookLM folder. All right. So my Copilot will now go into that NotebookLM folder. Once I say, hey, let's do the newsletters for the week, it will go into that NotebookLM folder. It will look through all those transcripts. It will write the no-code CAIO newsletter in Hotmail, and it will ask me if it's cool. Then it will publish it to the website as that landing page. And then we'll do the same thing with Field Notes newsletter. It will go through and go, what's relevant in here about AI and education this week? Okay, here's the template. Here's the articles. Here's the cartoon. Produce it in Hotmail. Let Jason check it off. Now I'll go to GitHub. I'll publish this as code. I'll push it to Cloudflare. And now both my newsletters, from just a, hey, go do this, and a review, which I oftentimes will not do very much. If I was going to be honest, I'll be like, yeah, it's probably good enough. And and those, so all that work is done without me having anything to do with it, because it has a bunch of permissions in my computer. It has access to my account, to my YouTube account. I even asked it as I was doing this morning. I was like, hey, If something came up in the Field Notes newsletter that related back to an old episode of the AGI Schools Out podcast, if I gave you access to that YouTube account, could you then put that URL in the newsletter to direct people to go back and check out that episode? And it said, it's easier than that. Actually, that's public information. I'll just create an index file of all your past episodes and I'll go ahead and include that in the workflow. And by the way, you shouldn't put all your URLs to Spotify, Apple, and all that in in the footnotes. So that's what Podlink is for. And I went ahead and created you an account in Podlink that has all those links in it. And here's the URL. And I clicked on it, and I'll be damned if there isn't like a link tree type, an updated version of Linktree that it created for me because I gave it permission to do so. That's Agentic AI. When the
Okay.
computer is doing a bunch of stuff and you don't have to have anything to do with it, those are agents.
Okay. So I guess my follow-up question to you is what qualifies as so when it comes to the data centers, right, that are being built and the environmental concerns and all that, and the pushback from the people, is the pushback specifically about the agentic AI, or you know what I mean? Like, are the data centers correlated with agentic AI specifically? I guess is what I'm trying to get down to.
This is a great caveat question, actually, Julie. So if you look at how any of these big foundation model companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, how they were trying to, for the last 3 years, get people to use their models. Okay. There are a couple of things that go into the cost of using AI. We won't even talk about the environmental impact. Let's just go with the cost first. One is the inference cost. How much compute are they throwing at this? So how long is it going to reason? How much of an expert? Do you want to hire a kindergartner to mow your lawn? Do you want to hire a high school kid to mow your lawn? Or do you want to hire a lawn company that comes with like all the equipment and does all the trimming and stuff? Because the kindergartner is this smaller model that does not cost that much to run, and it will do decent job of whatever you're asking it to do. But if you need it to help you create a strategic plan, it's probably not going to be real good for that, right? But that's a smaller model that costs X number of dollars for the questions you ask it, and X number of dollars cents probably for the questions that it answers, and that's all based on the amount of data center inference. How much are those chips running in order to give you that answer? Okay. So they were subsidizing for a lot of people the cost for their most powerful models because human beings, there's only a handful of human beings that could actually, if they were paying $100 a month, use the chat interface without agents enough to cost the company money rather than you paying for your own. So if I'm paying $100 a month for my Claude account and you're paying $100 a month for your Claude account, even if I'm using $150 worth of inference power, you're using 25 and so are six other people, and a couple people are using 12. So it all balanced out. Okay. Where agents became an issue is I could, and there are people who do have hundreds of agents running on my computer doing these questions and answers and researches and publications and everything 20 times faster than any human being. So now you're exponentially expanding both the electricity footprint, the water footprint, the spending footprint. So there's several questions that are coming to be from this, which is what is the cost for using the models going to be going forward, right? If you decide that you are a company who wants to do what we've done with Microsoft or Google historically and just pick a company and let them build out all your AI stuff, right? That's Claude. So now you have to kind of figure out, okay, where am I going to use the 5 different Claude models at 5 different costs? Like, where am I going to plug each of those in and say, this type of agent that moves calendar invites from my inbox to my calendar is like the lowest cost model. And the agent that is like doing our social media marketing, well, that's like a second to highest cost model because I want it to sound like us. And then our strategy ones, that's the highest cost model. That still will be fairly expensive. there is the ability to have what's called an LLM router, to where if you had someone who understood all this, you could take every agentic workflow and tie it to a different model, and it would cost you the least amount, but it's the most expensive to build and the hardest to maintain. Most people are going to lean into the pay a little more, use a little more power. And so now when you're looking at data centers, it's like human beings were turning on their air conditioning for 3 months a year. Now we have all these agents who are in their vacation homes all year round, and they're cranking up the air, and there's billions of them. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
It does. But I guess what I'm trying to specifically lean into as a layman is MI, right? So when we use AI in digital marketing and it does retargeting and it does those kind of things, is that using a same data center that an agentic AI is using? Okay.
Yes.
So essentially, it's all coming from the same source.
So is Netflix. So is TikTok. So is a lot, anything that you're running is, when I went for a tour of the data center that's in the Eastgate Mall, all of Netflix is run through that data center, right? It's not just AI. It's everything that's happening on the World Wide Web is being run by those data centers. Agentic AI just puts a lot bigger power strain than you could ever put on it. So if you are doing it for digital marketing, your footprint is a footprint in the sand. If you launch a bunch of agents, let's say you have 10 agents, you have a copyright agent, you have a graphics agent, and so they're doing all this stuff that would have taken you 10 hours. They're doing it in 15 minutes, right? You're using up 10 hours worth of that data center in 15 minutes, and you're doing it every 15 minutes if you're continuously running those agents.
So why then now? Is it because the increase in energy usage that there's this push back against? It's just interesting because if it is something that has been around, because I even think when we were talking about the predictive language, right? That's been around forever because, autocorrect, right, has been in our lives for generations, which I assume at this point is also a version of AI, right? So is the escalation the biggest concern, I guess? Or is this just people just now realizing, you know what I mean? Because even, the notes that you had sent me, I was listening to earlier and it's talking about the cloud, right? Like we all say, oh, it exists in the cloud, but that's basically a giant data center is my
Yeah.
understanding. So we have been participating in this for a long time.
Yes.
So is it just, again, is it the arms race version of, it's just interesting. It's like, are we just waking up to some of this stuff? I don't know.
That's a yes and. So it depends on where we're shining the spotlight on what we care about. For instance, golf courses use 5 times the amount of water as data centers in the United States of America, but nobody stopped playing golf or pointed out that golf courses use a ton of water. The almond industry in California uses about 1 billion gallons of water to the 100 million that data centers use. So we should all stop eating almonds if we care that much about water, right? So some of it is where media points their attention and says, this is bad, pay attention. And people are uneducated and they begin to pay attention. I would say the flip side of that coin is artificial intelligence does create a vast number of concerns. One is, are we retraining people for the workforce to come, or preparing for the fact that we may have a reduction in the need for human workers in the next decade? And another is, and listening to, I listened to the same NotebookLM that you did. And sometimes I have to slap myself because you do get like the inherent bias where you want to argue back, right? But I heard some things that I was like, that's bullshit. Like, we are offering zero sales tax to these companies to come to Indiana to try to attract them to come here for like 20 years. And I'm like, what in the hell are you thinking? Like, oh, they'll go somewhere else. No, they won't. There's tons of states that don't want them. They want places to be.
Yeah.
We should be arguing for this stuff, not against it.
I mean, and the flip side of that coin is, I don't want to pivot the whole conversation, but even the subsidies that they're offering $1 billion NFL team to move to Indiana, tax subsidies. That's bullshit. These are companies that already have billions of dollars. They do not need tax subsidies, you know what I mean? And then we're paying for it. We ultimately pay the price.
Yeah, and that I have struggled. And so they did bring up something also in that information that I thought was very interesting. It doesn't solve or bring up, to me, it just changes the conversation. And you'll actually like where I think it takes the conversation. So you can say that when you have reusable water, and this is true, if you use the type that does not pollute the water, that recycles the water, what a data center, an average data center ends up using in water in a town is about equivalent to what a restaurant would use. Okay. However, the flip side of that is that's what they're using inside the data center. That's 40% of the electricity and use. The other 60% is the power that comes, and the coal plants and everybody else that produces the power the data center has to use, the water they use is exponentially large, which gets you into the conversation of, okay, then let's start talking about renewable energy. Let's start talking about micronuclear plants. Let's start talking about putting up more windmills and more sun. Like let's have a realistic conversation about why we're pissing away a bunch of water on coal and gas if it doesn't make sense. I'm a Republican. I'm all for coal and gas if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then let's look somewhere else. And that's where these conversations need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the seeming, again, the lack of conversation around those pieces, right? Like even this morning was up on the rooftop and we had a whole conversation. There's so much you can look around downtown Lafayette and see all this rooftop space that you could easily put solar panels for solar energy. There's just a lot of options, but they just don't seem to be brought to the table. I know there's moratoriums on some solar projects here in town, and it's just fascinating to me. And I was glad to learn that the lawsuit against this SK Hynix thing has to do with transparency. I found that interesting because that has been a conversation you and I have been having is about how important that transparency is.
Could not agree more. The SK Hynix plant is huge. I mean, that you're talking like that's a different layer. That's chip manufacturing, where that's a huge bottleneck for the United States right now. The whole concern with is China going to attack TSMC in Taiwan is like a big question. So moving that stuff onshore is great conversations to be having, but damn it, you got to be transparent about what you're doing, what you're building. And yeah, I said the same thing when they wanted to put a methadone clinic over in Lafayette, and the homeowners around it were pissed off because it was going to devalue their homes. I'm like, this is where people have invested their life savings. They have every right to be upset. And by God, if you're going to build a plant that's going to devalue somebody's home, you better pay them the depreciation for that and help them move somewhere else where they can reinvest. Like, you can't just say, well, sorry, too bad. We built a plant that produces a bunch of ammonia and noise and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm sorry that your $500,000 house is now worth $120,000. No, that doesn't fly. That's not
Yeah.
okay.
Mm-mm. No, it's all, and it's all much more complicated, but we aren't privy to all that information, right? So, like, learning that our governor did deregulate mini nuclear energy, whatever. There's a part of me that's like, okay, because I do think nuclear energy is a part of where we're headed, like future wise, right? But the fact that, okay, you did that without like communicating to the people, letting people have any say. And, there could be conversations again about solar, about wind, about like all of these options. And then also, you know what I mean? Because that can get deregulation is a double edged sword too. Like there's never any truly right answer, right? But like these decisions without communicating to your citizens is really bothersome.
Yeah, I think what we need is, Lilly did, I don't know if it's 100 million or more than that, education fund out there for AI education in K through 12 and post-secondary education. That's amazing, but we need public education. Like, I feel the flip side of this of like, okay, we're going to educate you on the fact that we're doing more nuclear. And then people don't listen to the education. They just go, no, I'm anti-nuclear. And they start having protests and derail your entire project because they're uneducated and refuse to be educated. Like, the fact of the matter is, with artificial intelligence, lifetime learning is going to become a must for everyone
Mm.
in the United States of America and the world. You're just going to have to be more educated on a lot of things. How to operate this technology, what the pros and cons of it are, what as a society we need to be doing to make sure that our states and our counties and our communities are well taken care of in all of this. Everything sounds at face value one way or the other. But if you dig into it, like Bernie's idea of taking 50% of Bernie Sanders wants to take 50% equity in every single one of the big foundation model companies and give it to the United States so that they all become shareholders. That sounds like a great idea. You know what I would do if I owned one of those companies? I would offshore my ass immediately. Or the next foundation model company, I would not build it in the United States because you just cut my profitability in half. So actually, it's just like the billionaire tax. What it ends up doing is costing you a whole bunch of money because the people with the money leave. Do we need to get money from them? Yes, but probably through a tax, not through stealing half of their company. Like all those kinds of conversations have a lot of nuances to them that it is very difficult in a democracy the size of the United States to educate the masses to the nuances of all these conversations to the point where we can all ask each other these questions.
I understand that most of the population in the United States is at like a sixth grade reading level, right? So how do you even communicate that in terms that everybody can process and, understand and have a say? And I'm even totally guilty. Like I never thought, it's just I don't think about it, right? I didn't think about how the cloud has to exist somewhere, as you know what I mean? You just like go about life. Oh, you hear about the cloud and you don't really question it, but it's fascinating to me when you start thinking about it because it's like, oh, so this has been a thing. It's just we had our heads in the sand because Amazon or whoever is like, it's just the cloud, and or the, silicone tech bros, whatever. You just do the thing, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, okay. But had we started these conversations even back then, we might have might have taken a different path. Can't go back, but can try to make some better decisions moving forward.
Yeah, but you are not alone in that. I mean, I can remember it was a little bit pre-AI, but I do remember distinctively finding out what the cloud was because I can remember thinking like, what is the cloud? Like what radio waves they transfer around? Like, what the hell are they talking about when they say the
Right.
cloud?
Yeah.
The cloud is a data center. Yes, the cloud is not a cloud; it is a data center. It just means that the information that you're computing on whatever mechanism you are is not all happening on that mechanism. It's happening in a data center and then being transferred back and forth to you. And but you know what's funny, Julie? You know what technology has the ability to take all this type of stuff and break it down into the whatever education level any person needs in order to be able to palate it?
Yeah. Well, that is the upside. It can help us communicate, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It can
Mm.
help us communicate. It can help us. There are countries, and I can understand why a third world country would have less trouble doing this because they probably have more dictatorship and they have more urgency to sort things out. But there are let's just take, for instance, bills that go to Congress or the Senate. Like, oftentimes those bills are hundreds of pages long. They have all kinds of crap buried in them. So, my understanding, and I'm not a poli sci major, but my understanding is if I'm a senator and we're going to vote on something in 5 days and it just hit my desk, I have like a team of interns who are digging through all these pages, coming to me and telling me, well, Senator, you might want to pay attention to this, you might want to pay attention to that. Like, you could do all that like that with you could have an AI that understands your political stance on every single issue that you've trained. And every time one of those bill comes across, you go, hey, take a look at this 500 pages. What do I agree with? What do I disagree with? What do I need to mark up? And you just like exponentially made it more difficult to slip earmarked crap through. And you could educate the public on what all those bills, what all's in there. Right. So
Yeah.
each individual could build their own little, that's a great industry, could build their own little, this is my political beliefs chatbot. So whatever's going in front of Congress, let me know what I disagree with in this. What's hidden in there that I should know about that I should be calling my senator and saying, hey, don't vote for Senate Bill 1403 because it looks like it's about data centers, but on the back end of it, it's saying that you should ban all technology in K through 12, and I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because the other night at dinner during conversation, it became, representatives at this point they should be considering that they don't necessarily need to exist, because if we have access like that and we can vote on our own, what do you need a representative for?
Democracy may look very different once this technology is fully integrated, and there are some people thinking about those kinds of things. I do think it is, I'm not I wish I could jump in the time machine kind of guy, but my first love was philosophy. And back in the day, philosophy was just like, nobody gets a degree in philosophy unless they want to be a teacher. Like that's if you that's it. And now that is not the case. Like I see lots of these companies are hiring people with philosophy degrees. Lots of big conversations need people with philosophy degrees to come to the table, because how we are going to mitigate democracy, equanimity, like all these things going forward is going to be very, very different. And it's going to require some really complex conversations.
Yeah. Well, one thing you and I can both agree on is that we, the people, should not be paying for all this shit that all these billion-dollar companies have the money to pay for.
I could not agree with that more. We should be getting taxes back. We should be getting subsidies on our electricity if one of these places is moving in. We should be getting. I saw Meta's given like $100 million to something in Lebanon, and they're like, yeah, Meta's given $100 million to something in Lebanon. I'm like, that's like change in Mark Zuckerberg's couch. It's good. Okay. It's a start, but like, let's not stand on the rooftop and be like, "Ooh, look at what they did." Like they opened a $1 trillion business and they gave us $100 million worth of social services out of it, but they also raised our electricity bill by 10%. Like it
It doesn't make any sense.
does-
And, and again, it has me even looking at, like, again, the Bears facility different, because it's like, how cheap are you as a billion-dollar entity? How cheap are you that you're going to uproot an entire team that has been built, and it's not even being it's just like bananas to me. And I understand that Hammond is still considered like Chicagoland area, but, to uproot that because you're that cheap that you just don't want to, pay the taxes or whatever the case may be it's just obnoxious to me. Like, you can't take money with you when you die.
yeah.
What the fuck?
No, I agree. And I think that the way that we've looked at it, to my understanding historically, is like, how does whatever we're doing benefit big business in our state? And we need to shift that to how does what we're looking at benefit the average citizen in our state?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah,
we can do our part by keeping the conversation going, right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to playing with my AI agents for the rest of the weekend.
All right. All right. I'm going to go back up on the rooftop, I'm sure.
Well, have fun and stick a solar panel out while you're up there.
I know. I need to figure out how to do that, because I know in Europe they have like ones that you can put just on your apartments. So I should figure that out.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. Yeah. I should
Especially
ask an agent or even just a chatbot.
ask Perplexity. I guarantee you it'll tell you.
I'm sure of it. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you, Julie.